Do you think most people are familiar with the Holocaust?
No.
As two people that survived the Holocaust, how would you describe the Holocaust to people that don't know what it is?
The Holocaust, the word Holocaust, is used to refer to a carefully laid out master plan by Nazi Germany for the systematic liquidation of European Jewry.
How old were you when you went into the concentration camp?
Well, when it all started, I was 10 years old when it all started, when my father was taken away first into a labor camp, and then later on we were taken away first into a detention camp and then into a death camp of Auschwitz. That's where it really started, really the nightmares began.
You were at Auschwitz?
Yeah.
Sam, you were?
Yeah, I was in Auschwitz too.
How old were you?
I was 14.
How many of your family went into the camps? Your immediate family and your extended family?
Approximately about 75 members of my family.
And how many survived?
To the best of my knowledge, about 5.
5 out of 7?
5 out of 75, correct.
And Magda?
The first night when we arrived, 65 of my immediate members of my immediate family perished that same night. And then later on, 2 more had died because there were only 2 of us remained, my immediate family.
So out of 67, 2?
Right.
2 survived.
Right.
Before the Holocaust, before Nazi Germany, what was it like? You were normal kids, yeah? What was it like?
Well, I went to school. I attended Hebrew school, and we lived in a neighborhood. They were not, just like we do here in Omaha. We lived in a neighborhood with non-Jewish friends and families, and my father had a business, and we led a normal life like anywhere else. We went about our lives, not even knowing, not even caring what was going on.
What did you enjoy as a young girl before 10 years old, 9 years old? What were your hobbies?
Surprisingly enough, I loved school. Schooling in Europe at that time was not free like it's here. I mean, people only went to high school who could afford it. You paid tuition to high school, and I loved to go to school. And I was a gymnast.
Gymnast?
Yes, I was training to go. There was a international so-called, it was called like a so-called flight, an in-flight. It was going to be an international gathering, like similar to an Olympic.
And you were that good?
And I was training, we were training for that, and those were my hobbies.
Sam?
Well, basically it's similar. I went to school and had friends, and my ambition was to become an electrical engineer. And I had 2 brothers and a sister, and lived just like anybody else, any teenager would live here. The only difference was I didn't have a car, I had a bicycle. And I was looking forward to, when I get older, that I'll have a motorcycle. Car was a dream. It was, you never expected to get an automobile.
The day, the night that you were taken to the concentration camp, what was it like? What do your memories tell you? What that last day when you were taken, how were you taken? What happened when you got to there?
Go ahead.
When you just mentioned the word of the day you were taken, I get goose pimples running down my spine, because when we were taken, we spent the last day of Passover together as a family.
Passover, what do you mean Passover is a...
Our holiday of Passover was over. We were planning to go into hiding. The family was planning, had built a bunker in the countryside, and we were going to go into hiding, but the whole family was going to spend Passover together. Only we never made it. The next day, it just so happened, like today is the last day of, oh, I forgot, Today is the last day of Passover. And the next day they started gathering the Jews in our town. And they came, like the second day after that, they came and gathered us up together. We were all brought into a big synagogue all over from our area. We stayed there about 2 days, and then we were loaded onto trains and taken into a detention camp in a different town that was an abandoned brick factory. And we stayed there for 6 or 8 weeks.
And Sam, what memories do you have with?
I have, I remember as a kid, a teenager, is playing, minding my own business. And I remember one Sunday morning particularly, I was riding a bicycle, and a local druggist, he saw me riding on a bicycle. And he called me in and he asked me would I go down to a nearby town to see that supposedly they're gathering all the Jews there. So I went down there. I took the yellow star because we were supposed to wear the yellow star. I took that and I threw it away. I took my cap, I threw that away, too, because I didn't want to be recognized. And I came to that town, and sure enough, I saw they were gathering all the Jewish people there. And a local policeman, he saw me there. He recognized me. He was a friend of the family. So quickly he came over to me. He says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Get out of here, quick." I told him why I came. I came because to find out, to see, is it really happening there? And he says, "Yes, it is. As a matter of fact," he says, "we're going to pick up all the Jews in our town, too, the following Wednesday morning." So quickly I came home, and I told the druggist. And then I went from practically house to house and told people what I saw when I was told. And the reaction was everybody just said, "Just relax. Don't worry about it. Here's a glass of milk. Everything is going to be all right." And I told my parents the same thing.
It was kind of disbelief.
Yes,
this wasn't really happening.
Yeah, and even though I saw it, I was naive too, because I felt surely, something like that. It's just not going to happen in our town. We had many friends.
And when it happened, when you were packed together like, as we hear, cattle on a cattle train, what were your thoughts? What happened when you got to the camp, when you were there, the transportation, and then once you were there, what were your feelings? What were your thoughts as a 10-year-old, as a 14-year-old? What could possibly be running through your minds?
We were frightened, like there are no words to describe the fright and the fear. We were paralyzed. When we were taken from this detention camp to Auschwitz, we were packed like sardines, standing room only. And it was almost like unbelievable. People were just numb until we arrived at Auschwitz, when we stopped there and we saw the chimneys with the smoke pouring out of them and the smell. Still to the last minute, I remember my father saying, there is a remark saying that if God wills it, a broom can shoot. And somehow a disbelief going that it's not going to happen. It isn't to the last minute you believe it isn't happening to you and it's not going to happen. That somehow we were told that we are being relocated, that we were being taken to a different place, to being relocated for security reasons or whatever. But that we were being relocated.
And when you got there, what happened? When you were taken off of the trains?
Well, when we were taken off and the doors were open, we were taken in cattle trains. We were packed in there, and as Magda was telling me, there was only standing room only. There was no room to carry out your daily biological functions at all. And I remember it was 3-4 days we were traveling in the train. Our train had priority. They were so anxious to get us there quick, that was the most important mission for them to carry out. The train arrived, and we remember the first thing as we arrived, the train stopped. We could smell something, some terrible odor. We didn't know what it was all about. Didn't have no idea. There was fear already. When they opened the door finally 2-3 hours later on the trains, we arrived approximately at a train. There was about 3,000 people on the train. Men, women, children. And they would open the door and they would have us line up. They hollered. We heard yelling there, line up. 5 abreast, and we would line up there, and we were walking towards the Gestapo. An officer, Dr. Mengele, was one of the officers who would stand there, and he would stand there just like Napoleon, and with his finger pointing one direction or the other direction. If you would point to the right, then you went to the gas chamber. If you pointed to the left, you went to an area where they would put you to work. They really didn't want to keep any of us alive. All they were going to do is use up every bit of energy there was, and those of us who were capable of working, and then let nature take its course.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the first 24 hours, If you can visualize a trainload of people, human beings, arriving in 3,000, 75% of those people were sent to the gas chamber in the first 24 hours. After that, those of us who were fortunate enough to survive the first 24 hours were sent to work camps. And there again, there were selections all the time.
Was there a typical day? Was there a typical day in a concentration camp? What happened? You got up in the morning. What did you do? What went on?
Well, for me, maybe Magda can tell you too, for me a typical day was that I was fortunate enough that I was put to work in a coal mine, but my job was to maintain the electrical equipment. And we would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We would stand for a pail. A pail, it meant was a head count. And then the next thing they would give us a cup of black coffee. And after that, we would march to the coal mine. Then there again, they would count a pail, head count. From there, we would go down to the coal mine. And again, at middle of the night, I shouldn't say middle of the night, probably around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we would get back in again to camp. Again, a pail. After that, we would get a cup of soup. The soup, really, what that was boiled potato peelings. Wasn't even washed. And every once in a while, a slice of bread. That was our daily ration. The reason for the
Cup of coffee, soup, and bread. That was what you ate.
That was what we ate. The reason for the appel so many times, not only a head count, but they constantly selected. In other words, they would line us up and look us over, and anybody who didn't look fit to work that day would be taken out and sent to the gas chamber. So if you can just imagine, out of 50 people, an average daily, they would take out, every time we would line up for a bell, they would take out 2 people. So,
and you knew that.
Oh, yeah,
that
absolutely, yeah.
So you knew that death was
coming.
right there.
It was right
you know,
there, absolutely.
Right there. And Magda, what, for a woman, for a young girl, what?
For us, I worked in Birkenau, which is infamous for the fact that we were adjoining the crematoriums and the gas chambers. We were separated from them by a wire fence, electrified wire fence, in a trench filled with water. So we also knew the first 24 hours what was going on. We had no illusions of what was happening. And we worked at sorting the things that all the victims brought and preparing them to be sent to Germany to be sold or given to the populace. I specifically worked at cleaning coats and stuffing them one into the other, arm into arm, like 24 coats in one, tying them together after they were clean, approximately the same size, and that's what we were shipping away. One time I worked at crushing glass. I worked there. The fact that we worked at the items that the victims were bringing, many a times we would find a piece of chocolate or something. So our diet in Auschwitz specifically was not as horrible. It was after we left Auschwitz is when we were even on a more starvation diet. But we got the same thing as far as the official diet. That is what we got, what Sam received.
What about living conditions, sleeping quarters, clothing? Did you keep warm?
We got one dress. We were taken, and when we arrived, we were shaved, our heads everywhere, our private parts were shaved. Everything was taken away from us and given one striped dress, the blue and white stripe, and we were tattooed. That is all. There was not even a name.
Tattooed
On my arm, yes, which I have a lifetime memento. And that is all we had. We slept on the bare barracks. There were 3 to a barrack to the size bunk, the size of a bunk of a twin bed. 3 of us slept, my sister and I and another girl. And there was no heat. There were no windows. There was opening in the barracks were made like like log, kind of similar to log things, and that is all we had in there. We would be allowed to go once a day to the latrines on the outdoors. We did not get to wash.
Just once a day?
Yeah, once a day. Before we went to work, we were allowed to go to the latrines and kind of marched in there. And if we had to go any other time, we had to have permission, and we had to be guarded and all that.
I know you both were on a death march, both of you.
Yes.
Yes.
Describe the death march. What is a death march?
Well, a death march consisted of is what they did is when they finally realized that the Russians were approaching, we could hear the guns, the big guns, the noise of the big guns. One morning they gathered all the prisoners without any provisions whatsoever. They lined us up and they started marching us.
How many?
Approximately 4,000 to 5,000. That's how many there was in that camp. And they would march us not to the main highways. This was in January, snow on the ground. And every once in a while, we would stop. Every couple of hours, we would stop and they would set up the machine guns and started shooting. And they would stop
Just
shooting,
at random? Just shooting at random?
Just thinning out. They didn't want to get caught with prisoners. They were marching us away from the Russian front. And then every couple of hours they would do that, and we marched for 3 days. Then we made another stop again in another camp to pick up fresh prisoners. There was less than 500 of us left by the time we arrived 3 days later in the other camp.
Less than 500 out of
Yes.
5,000?
Yes.
Magda, what happened with
I
you?
was after Auschwitz when the Russians were approaching. I remember that day, it was January 18th. We were the last ones to leave Auschwitz because we were burning up all the evidence. They were burning it in piles. And then when we left, we marched first several miles. I don't even know, I lost track of time.
How many? Do you know?
To a train. And then we were shipped to Ravensbrück, which was an infamous camp. This camp was run by a woman at the time, and she was the most cruel woman. Sometimes they say that men are cruel and mean, but when a woman is ornery, I don't think anything can top her.
What do you mean she was? Can you be specific with?
I don't even know if you really want to hear it, what this woman did. There weren't supposed to be any babies in the camp. And apparently some arrived because they were bringing people from the Eastern Front to Ravensbrück, and apparently there was an infant born. And she grabbed that infant by its feet and smashed its head on a railing. And I will never forget that sight.
You saw that?
Yes. And she was just unbelievable, cruel. And we were standing at Appel's there all day long. And from Ravensbrück, in food we were getting, they were bringing soup. It looked like an oatmeal, thick oatmeal, and it had some potato peelings in it, but it was full of sand. Now, I don't know whether the potatoes were intentionally not washed, but usually we were eager to get the bottom, where on the bottom they were a little more thickening, but we'd end up getting sand with it. And whoever didn't make it to the end of the line didn't get any food. It didn't make any difference. Then from there we were taken to 2 more camps, and then we were on a death march because Sam was liberated after the death march because he stayed behind. But I was liberated when the war was already over and didn't even know it.
Now that you're liberated, what is a liberated survivor? I mean, you spent certainly your adolescent years, you became a woman, if you would, a girl to a woman in a concentration camp, and now you're free. What happens? Where do you go?
That's a good question. Is if you can just imagine yourself as a human being, you were reduced to absolute animal level. Everything is taken away from you. Your past, your material things, your family, and all of a sudden your name is taken away from you. You don't even know who you are. And all of a sudden here you are. You're facing the world. What do you do? The first thing I did is I went back home. As broken as I was physically, So I was hoping maybe I can at least physically continue till I get home. I went back home to a town where I came from. I didn't find any members of my family. I was hoping I'd find somebody. But when I came home, the people there, our friends, our neighbors, they looked at me as I was a stranger. Absolute stranger. It was like I came from someplace, from a past. I shouldn't have come back. They didn't expect me back. I left. And I had two problems to face. One is the physical. I survived physically, but then I had another problem. It's mentally, what do you do? You don't have nothing. Where do you start? And that's difficult. I had to go back to square one. First of all, I had to have a reason to continue. If I was going to stay with the past, there was no reason for me to continue. If I was going to look to the future, I had to have a reason. Why should I continue? My own personal reason was that I felt as long as I am alive and I continue, Hitler of Nazi Germany lost. And that probably was the turning point for me.
I know that both of you speak to groups, Jewish and non-Jewish. You disclose your story. It's a very painful story. It must be very painful to relive all of these memories. Why do you do it?
Well, I do it because, first of all, I never anticipated in my wildest dreams 30-some odd years ago, when I got out, that I would have to mentally relive or tell the story to anybody. I felt surely mankind is going to remember that and know it forever and ever what really happened. And here is 35 years later. Now there are those already who are denying that the Holocaust happened. This is in my own lifetime. I'm still alive. They are denying a place in history to the millions and millions of victims. I felt I can't stand by. I must, as painful as it is, I must speak. Because I have to tell you, I am the eyewitness. People like me, Magda is. And there those of us, we have to speak. We have to tell you what happened. Because the only one way you can prevent it is if you know it happened. There's 18-year-old kids today don't have no idea that it happened.
Coming out of that situation and feeling as strongly as you do, I know you have 3 children. Why are you not bitter? I know you personally. I know you're not bitter, in a sense. I know you are. How do 2 people survive coming up, loving and caring and having a life together with 3 children? And how do you survive that? How do you do that?
We felt that we had to be more humane and more human than our oppressors. Otherwise, we would sink to the same level as they did. And we felt that we cannot live in the past. We were looking forward, building a future, and the best future we can ever build is with our children, with loving children, and we do have the best children there are. And we have made a home here in Omaha, and until just recently, a few years ago, we really locked our past behind us and started as if it had not happened, as if we would have started. We kept saying what was didn't exist. We started our life here in Omaha and started and made ourselves a life all over and didn't even want to. We pretended it didn't exist. We were born here. And like Sam said, until recently, we did go on and pretend it didn't exist, although we have had nightmares, and you can't forget it. It lives with you forever. But we tried, and we hope we have succeeded with our children to give them a life with as few obstacles as we possibly could have given them, and made our life as good as we possibly can with the background that we have.
I know that you have used the term, used the term with me before, a living witness. And I think that you are living witnesses to a hideous and an unfortunate incident in man's civilization, quote unquote civilization. But I think that your capacity to live through this hideous incident and coming up capable of caring, of loving, of sharing your story, if you will, painful as it is, with others, is also a tribute to your capacity and the capacity of all men to be able to be positive. And that maybe, in a sense, if you would, that maybe good does conquer evil. And you certainly are a tribute to that.
Well, thank you. We are very optimistic, I want you to know. We are looking not to the dark side of the past, but we are looking to the future, to the good side. And we are optimistic, and we feel that there is a good future ahead.
And we hope that mankind has learned from the past, so there would be a good future, so that there would never, ever happen another Holocaust, whether to the Jewish people or to any people. And if mankind has learned from its past, then there's only good to be seen in the future for all people on this earth, and in space too.
Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Jewish Community, a series of programs dealing with the accomplishments, the needs, and the goals of the Jewish community in the Omaha area. Produced by the Jewish Community Relations Committee and the Jewish Federation of Omaha in cooperation with KMTV.